In Havana, Cuba's capital, time has stopped in some respects. Not even 1% of Cubans own a car. In Cuba, there are more one-horse carriages than passenger cars. Hardly anyone even dreams of owning a car here. With an average monthly income of €15, it doesn't even come into question, even though accommodation costs very little, staple foods and other essentials are subsidized, and the health and education systems are free. US classic cars have now been declared part of Cuba's cultural heritage. They have been privately owned since the Cuban Revolution, and there are still 50,000 of them, mostly in Havana. This 1959 Cadillac Sedan Deville is one of the best maintained. Jorge Luis Fleites bought it 5 years ago. He works as a lawyer for a foreign company and can afford this original road cruiser as a hobby.
I love everything to do with the 50s. The architecture, the design, it's all very beautiful. And of course, cars above all. Since my childhood, I've driven cars from this era.
Today, Jorge Luis Fleites is driving his 8-cylinder luxury automatic, of which only 248 were produced, to a classic car meeting. The members of his club, A lo Cubano, meet on the famous coastal road, the Malecon. Twice a year, these automobile enthusiasts display their gems. They are particularly proud of this 1949 four-door Hudson and of this 1960 Buick. But there are also older specimens, such as this Ford Model A, dating from 1930. In Cuba, cars may only be bought or sold officially with government approval. In the case of classic cars, the government wants to prevent this cultural heritage being sold off to foreign countries. You can buy a classic car unofficially, but the original owner will remain registered in the papers. Trust is required. Like almost everyone else, the owner of this 1952 Chevrolet Fleetline sedan also participates in the precision driving event. This Lincoln Continental Mark II with 285 horsepower is said to have belonged to the wife of the former Cuban dictator Batista. But the vast majority of classic cars in Cuba are not just exhibition pieces sitting in a garage all week. They are in everyday use. Like this 58 Edsel, which was hired to take this young lady out on her 15th birthday. Cuba does have a bus system that has been considerably modernized in recent years, but many classic cars are also in service for public transport, not only emitting very respectable clouds of gas, but often also bursting at the seams. Incidentally, there are no emission regulations in Cuba. If you own a classic car here, you are considered lucky because you can earn good money with it as a small private enterprise. This 1950 Chrysler belongs to a man who has been a taxi driver for many years. But Abelardo Rivero decided 9 years ago to go back to the profession he originally learned. Abelardo Rivero is a car body repairer. He is a private businessman with a license. There is enough work, and he can even afford an employee. Both work occasionally for their workshop neighbor, who mainly deals with motorcycles. Two-wheelers, because they are comparatively cheap, are very popular in Cuba. Everything is still done by hand, and not only in this body shop. Suitable tools, not to mention machines, are very difficult to find. Abelardo Rivero gets by with very little equipment.
I made this sheet metal bender myself because I used to spend days working on parts like these. It makes everything go faster, and the work is less stressful and healthier. I copied it from an original, and these metal shears too.
Currently, the two men are working on an Austin. Abelardo Rivero estimates that the complete overhaul will take 2 months. He has agreed a fixed price with the client. In Europe, it wouldn't be enough to get more than a couple of scratches repaired. Seven o'clock on a parking lot in the Lauton district. The Almendrones owners are getting their taxis ready.
It's a job like any other. Everyone has to make sacrifices. There are quite a few Almendrones. All of them want to make money. You have to work, drive, and keep driving. But I like it. I like chauffeuring.
For a few days, things have been difficult.
I'm having problems with the gears and I can't get it into reverse at all. That's the problem at the moment, but it'll work out.
Over 50 years have passed since the revolution. Raúl Castro succeeded his ailing brother Fidel as head of government and president and has introduced some gentle economic reforms. For example, more licenses have been given to private taxi operators as well as bicycle taxi riders. These small businessmen can now decide themselves how much their customers should pay. At a minimum of 70 euro cents per litre, fuel prices are extremely high by local standards and are also a concern. No wonder then if the rumours are true that many private drivers are getting their fuel on the black market. Of course, many cars imported from the former Eastern Bloc are also conspicuous on the streets of Havana. Once they're no longer roadworthy, they are a valuable source of spare parts for US classic cars. Mechanic Enrique Diaz is just getting a 1951 Willys running again. Either you have relatives in Florida who bring you the spare parts you need, he says, or you need to use your imagination. You have to make do with the tools and spare parts that you can muster.
Here we have a 1500S Lada engine. The brake pump is Japanese, from Nissan. The suspension comes from Moskvich. And the rear axle is from a Volga, also Russian. The transmission came out of a Lada, and the drive shaft is also Soviet.
US classic cars are a part of Cuba, just as much as the US embargo. But no one wants to predict exactly when it will be lifted.